So technocracy is, let's see, the control of society or industry by an elite, by having self-appointed technical experts. And it comes from Greek, skilled rule. And so what happens is you have experts from these different fields defining terms and policies, even if they're not, like you could have a tech expert talking about a medical intervention, for example, as clearly we have today. So that's technocracy. It actually started, was first coined in 1919. A guy, Smith, termed turned it to mean control of a society or an industry by an elite group of technical experts. And it became most widely sort of known as a movement during the Great Depression. And I have to say, technocracy and understanding that is really a doorway into the whole next level of red pill, and understanding the worldview of those who are, at the helm of the technocratic sort of evolution of things. It really helps us to understand their worldview in order to be both more predictive and more leveraged in our response, and create sort of a strategic opportunity for us. Gates is a perfect example of a technocrat. This is what happens where you have somebody who, let's say, is an expert in the world of computers, having, key influence all over the place. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of this slide, but it just shows, and believe me, this is just a lightweight chart of Bill Gates' involvement and control in every aspect of what we defined as health earlier when we showed up, whether it's the economics, the social, the occupational, and biological. He's highly influential there, and that's the nature of technocracy. So, and universities, health organizations, vaccine companies, and all the rest. And one of the things that you can kind of start to get the gist of is how risky technocracy is in terms of conflicts of interest. When somebody is in a position like Gates, where he has financial benefit from all of these different investments, then of course that presents its own issues. And this is where for some of us looking into Bill Gates and all that, it's really a good time to remember our mission, that I am a friend of your soul and an enemy of your project. And so the technocrats are merging together to gather, transport, store, analyze, and bet on the success of their interventions. That's what's going on in the technocratic arena of health, modern health. And clearly, I really want to emphasize, and it's something that we'll be talking more about next time also, that there really is tremendous advantage to some of this feedback and the intervention in terms of picking up early signs of imbalance and curing ailments and extending our what they call health spans, where it's not just living longer, but it's living longer and being healthy. And that's very significant. So it will, we'll get into that more, but there's so many things about it that are problematic. It's easy to want to write it off. And then there are so many things about it that are advantageous that it's easy for some to just take it on. And I think this calls for a much more nuanced and sophisticated and serious analysis of costs and benefits along the way. So understanding the data, that's critical, because the way this alliance forms of technology and biology is through data. And the data gathering happens for both groups and individuals. So sensors and data biometric technologies that are installed in public and private spaces for facial recognition or fingerprint sensors or retinal scanning. And those obviously have a lot of significance in social monitoring and control. And one of the places this is really played out extremely is in China with something that's called the social credit score. A lot of you probably know about that. We read an article, Foster and I, in 2008 by Naomi Klein in Common Dreams, where she talked about Shenzhen, the city in China that was the place where all the American surveillance companies were practicing out their technologies. And we were invited to China to do some other fascinating stuff. That's another story. But while we were there, we went to Shenzhen to check out this surveillance city. And it was really remarkable, super creepy. And it's interesting today to be seeing some of the technology here in America that we saw back there. And I think it was 2013. So the notion of the social credit score, for those of you who aren't familiar in China, is that they say it's a unified record system. So for individuals and businesses, so that what they say is so that they can be tracked and evaluated for trustworthiness. Now, trustworthiness is defined in terms of compliance with government orders and mandates. So your behavior has to demonstrate that you are abiding by whatever those mandates might be, or because they have all your data, they can keep you from receiving your paychecks or any kind of social aid, or be able to travel. And you have to keep a certain score. And that score, it can be docked. Your score can be lowered if you hang out with someone who has a lower score. It can be docked if you play loud music or eat on a train or jaywalk or run a red light, and many other things that obviously can be used for massive control, because if you can't get the things that you need to survive, you're going to be stuck. And so one of the things you can do to get your score back up higher is praise the government or give blood. So again, I'm going to tag a few things here in terms of the amount of things that we are enlisted to do that involve giving biological data. So, hey, do a little saliva test and you can find out about your DNA. You can give blood to raise your good social credit score. You know, I mean, in terms of like Ancestry.com, that was bought for billions by Calico, which is a subsidiary of Google. So this biological data and the technology world and where that goes in terms of economics and all the rest is quite significant. And clearly there are lots of violations of individual privacy and autonomy. But this also poses whole new risks for discrimination and bias in employment and education and finance and access to health insurance, and I mean really the distribution of all kinds of social resources. And once the state normalizes the practice of tracking people and their networks, and within the context now of this pandemic, they can move into using these apps to influence health-related behaviors in all kinds of subtle and overt ways. And all of this data that's gathered is then bought and sold and used to train artificial intelligence. So it's really useful to see how the current compliance of forfeiting our data fits into what many of these technocrats in the world of health hope to become our new normal. In terms of individual data, with the with technology, the HIPAA and other privacy considerations don't apply. So informed consent, sharing of information, any checks on is the data accurate, the risk of hacking, cyber attacks, and ownership of the products in the body actually can turn into ownership of us. So there are some very significant things, and it's been fascinating to be part of the Singularity University because I'm exposed there to many of the companies that are developing these things and get to hear them talk about, the COVID opportunity and what they're doing in terms of navigating the contracts for ownership of parts that are implanted or ingested by us. And that's sort of their considerations. Like, well, there might be some ethical considerations, but we really need to think about, what if the company goes out of business and the person's made up of these products? Who are they going to go to? Anyway, mapping the genome actually revealed that the DNA, our DNA, is similar to the principles and the logic found in computers. And so Gates funded a study by the University of Washington that's now complete, where they were able to demonstrate the capacity to store and read data in our DNA. So note again, this, in the world of technocracy, a self-appointed expert who can fund the university research, owns the tech, influences the science, and basically controls the money and is invested in 5 and 6G, which is the transport system for our biological data into the cloud. So this whole thing about health freedom, meaning self-ownership, is very significant. It's actually not just a concept. It's like, what are we made of and who owns that?